What's going on, everybody? My name is Dan Becker, and I love hiking and backpacking gear. You know how it is. You buy a piece of gear, right? And you start to use it for your backpacking trips. And then you start to watch YouTube videos. And then you realize you probably should have bought something else, so you buy that, and now you've got two pieces of gear. And then all of a sudden, you start to watch more YouTube videos. Then you're like, well, this guy told me to buy this, and this guy told me to buy this, and it just gets maddening. And then by the end of the season, you're like, man, I should have bought this when I first started out the season, the year, backpacking all together. And it just gets to a point where you accumulate all of this gear. And then you get to the point where you're like, I'm gonna take as little as possible. It's gonna be as lightweight as possible. I'm gonna be a minimalist backpacker. I'm just gonna bring like just a paper bag and some dental floss, and I'm gonna whittle a tent. And here's how you know this is true. Go online to YouTube and just type in gear loadouts or backpacking gear setups or whatever. And everybody's is gonna be different. You'll never find two that are exactly the same. Everybody's got their personal preferences, their favorites, and you think, man, I wish I would have bought this sooner. Well, this is my list, the 2020 version of the gear I should have bought sooner. So here we go. Number one, I wish I would have bought a lightweight backpack that carried heavier loads sooner. So if you've followed my channel for any length of time, you've probably discovered that I started out as a super ultralight backpacker, like wannabe, and then I progressed into YouTuber, and I progressed into just this person who loves to weekend warrior camp and hike, and I'm just kind of a regular guy that goes out on weekends, and I love to bring different stuff and different types of gear, but I have this system that's dialed down. And even though it's dialed down, I'm carrying more stuff with me, and I wish I would have bought a backpack that was not only lightweight, because you can find really lightweight backpacks for fairly inexpensive, but it's tough to find lightweight backpacks that are inexpensive and carry heavy loads. I started out with a few different backpacks that were cheaper backpacks, and they were really heavy backpacks because I had a huge amount of gear that I didn't know what I was doing, so I carried like 30-40 pounds worth of base weight gear. And then I finally started to lower my base weight, and I bought this Z-Packs. It's this one right here. This is the Z-Packs Arc Blast, I believe it is, and that's a great backpack. I really enjoy it, but it doesn't carry heavy loads very well. And then I eventually got the Hyperlight Mountain Gear Southwest 3400 backpack right up here. This one carries about 35 to 40 pounds pretty comfortably, so it's able to carry like the 8 to 10 pounds of extra camera gear that I bring with me out when I'm hiking to film YouTube videos. But I wish I would have thought about that early on and purchased the backpack that was able to do both. So if you're looking for that kind of a backpack, I highly recommend that one. It's super comfortable, and it's fantastic for carrying the heavier loads, and it is a pretty lightweight backpack. All right, number two, I wish I would have bought a sleep pad that was wide. I sort of blame the original ultralight Dan Becker as the problem in this whole situation, because everything I bought, I was buying based on weight only. I didn't care about functionality. Once I realized that functionality was going to be a huge thing, I started buying things based off of functionality first and then weight. And that's made a big difference overall, because I've been able to become more comfortable that way and still remain comfortable by making sure it's also lightweight. So like when I'm buying something, I look at the function first, and then I look for the lightest weight of all of those items that provide a good function for me. And I usually pick that one as long as it's cost effective, and it turns out to work out pretty well. But in the circumstance of a sleeping pad, I ended up buying a 20-inch wide sleeping pad, and I thought no big deal. Everybody rants and raves about this particular sleeping pad. It was the NeoAir X-Lite, Thermarest NeoAir X-Lite, and at the time it was like every thru hiker on the planet was using it. All the big channels were using it, ranting and raving about it, and I couldn't figure out why I was so uncomfortable on this thing. Well, it ended up being that it was too narrow, and not only was it too narrow, it was really noisy too. It had some insulating values on the inside of it that crinkled quite a bit, and it kept me up all night long. Or if I was like sleeping with my kid, I would wake them up if I was rolling over. It was just a bad thing. But going to a wider sleep pad finally was like a game changer for me. It was almost like being able to mimic what I did at home for my sleep system, because when you get out on the trail, and I've put a whole video about this, I'll link that up right here. When you get out on the trail and you've taken yourself out of the environment of your house and you're now in a different environment that you're not necessarily used to because you're only out there so often, your ability to sleep the first night or two is obviously a little bit more difficult. So being able to mimic what I've done at home by having a sleeping pad that's wider and it feels more like home, I can roll around on it. I don't have to worry about falling off. If it's cold out, I don't have to worry about my arm or my leg hitting the cold ground and waking me up and that kind of thing. But that made a big difference. I wish I would have bought a wider sleeping pad to begin with. Okay, number 3, this is sort of a controversial topic because there's like two groups of people that fall in these two camps, no pun intended. I should have bought a lightweight tent before I bought a hammock. I started out backcountry camping and backpacking right away in a hammock because that's what YouTube told me to do, because as soon as you start looking at hammocks on YouTube, YouTube's gonna recommend every other video on hammocks on the sun, and everybody's gonna tell you how great they are. And they are great, and I have had pretty decent night sleeps in hammocks. But I started camping with my kids, and I started bringing out a tent, and it was a bigger tent because I needed to have me and my kid sleep in the tent together, and I didn't have the money back then to buy a lighter tent. And as I've progressed, I've realized that I enjoy the living space of a tent, and I really do sleep as well in a tent as I do in a hammock, because I do enjoy the hammock experience. It's a lot of fun. And I've got literally right now 6 hammocks in my gear setup right now. I had another one sent to me this week by a company. But the ability for me to have my own living space, knowing that I'm gonna sleep as well as a hammock, and I know a lot of you hammock campers out there are gonna totally disagree with this, and you're gonna tell me, ground dwelling is terrible, and it's really not, depending on the gear that you buy. And I have figured out how to do it and choose my campsites. And I do know that there's limitations in campsites, and you can pretty much hang a hammock as long as there's 2 trees on any terrain, so I get all that. And those are definite benefits to hammock camping, and that's why I still have a bunch of hammocks, and I'm still gonna do it. But I prefer the tent now, and I wish I would have discovered that early on. I wish I would have learned how to sleep in the backcountry in a tent first. I wish I would have bought a lightweight tent before I bought a hammock first. All right, and number 4, this is the last thing on the list for you guys. I wish I would have bought a long spoon sooner. I know what you're thinking, that's pretty weird, right? Yeah, well, it is kind of weird, but it makes a big difference. This was one of the first spoons I bought right here. This is a GSI Outdoors ultralight spoon, weighs next to nothing, folds up into this, gross, there's still food on it. That's nasty, oh my gosh. Dan Becker, take care of your gear. This thing packs up to literally nothing. I mean, look at the size of this thing. It's like as small as my finger. But when you extend it, you think it's gonna extend, a lot, but it's really not. It's like maybe 5 inches long. And if you've got those dehydrated, food bags, this really doesn't get down into it without getting your hand halfway in the bag and making your hand all dirty. I wish I would have not bought this as my ultralight, spoon. And I wish I would have bought something like I did later. Sooner. This has got to go. Okay, this is the Human Gear Duo spoon fork combo. It's 2 utensils, and then you just pull it apart, you snap it together, and now you've got this really long spoon to get down to those dehydrated food bags, and it weighs, I think, under an ounce. It's like 0.8 ounces. But to have a fork and a spoon that's long, that also breaks down, which is important to me. I like to be able to break stuff down and be able to put it in my cook pot, and this just barely fits in my cook pot. This is about as long as this spoon is folded out. So I wish I would have realized on the front end and bought this a lot sooner. It's just one of those gear items you just kind of sit back at. It seems kind of silly, you're thinking about a spoon, but you're like, man, I really wish I would have bought this sooner. All right, that's it. Is there more stuff? Probably, but I'm gonna have to save that for my 2021 edition. If you guys like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Also subscribe for more. Hit the bell notification so I can send you a video every single time it's released. Also, I do have an Instagram, so make sure you follow me there. I'll put that right here, and I will see you on the next one.